Hey, Bob, a lot of memories coming back, Waco and Ruby Ridge, right?
I see Ruby Ridge, Waco coming right back, and it would be a tragedy.
I mean, in all those instances, obviously the government was wrong in Waco. The government was wrong at Ruby Ridge, except the people in those situations were also pretty goofy. So what the government should do is just back off.
I'll be honest, we saw what happened at Waco and the Branch Davidians. I'm concerned we have exclusive details on what some say may become the next Ruby Ridge or Waco Davidian compound issue. Some say a potential Waco or Ruby Ridge is about to unfold.
The Fox News Channel this week has been breathlessly, almost excitedly, trying to reignite an already tense situation in southern Nevada, not only hyping the cause of the folks who mounted an armed standoff against federal law enforcement this weekend, but pitching the story over and over and over again as the second coming of the Waco and Ruby Ridge tragedies from the 1990s. Joining us now is Jim Kavanaugh. He's a retired special agent in charge for the ATF. He was a key hostage negotiator during the 1993 standoff with the Branch Davidian compound at Waco, Texas, in the 90s. Mr. Kavanaugh, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks, Rachel.
I thought of you when watching that Fox coverage and realizing that they were bringing it back to Waco, and specifically to Ruby Ridge as well, over and over and over again. I just have to ask, as somebody who was there and involved in that response, do you think there's any level at which it is appropriate to compare what's happening right now to what you went through at Waco?
Well, I think only in the minds of the radical right, where they can see a violent conflict with government authority and government agents, and then they can turn it into a cause célèbre to strengthen their movement. This movement's not new. We dealt with them in the 70s, post-civil rights era in the South. We dealt with them as when they were the Posse Comitatus. We dealt with them when they bled over with the Klan. But in the 90s, they became more galvanized right after the Ruby Ridge event. And, that involved a man who failed to report for a court hearing on a gun charge. And the ensuing tragedy occurred, as you described. And mistakes, certainly on both sides, but, failure to report in a nation of laws to court to address the charge. And that's what we had. But right after that, there was a seminal event. Rachel was in Estes Park, Colorado, where the radical right, the real deep movers in the radical right met and had a summit meeting, kind of like the mob had in Appalachia, New York in the 50s. And out of that summit meeting really came the new and improved radical militia paramilitary activities of the 90s. Louis Beam, the infamous Klansman, was there, and he posited the leaderless resistance at that meeting. So that was a seminal event in the radical movement in America. And of course, then we had Waco, which everyone here is talking about, but just a few facts to clear that up. You had a charismatic cult leader, David Koresh, who would take a family into the cult. From then on, he would sleep with the man's wife. He would sleep with the 12-year-old and 14-year-old female children that the man might have brought in there. He would control their lives completely. He stockpiled machine guns and silencers and hand grenades and made all these things. And he named the place Ranch Apocalypse. And he was destined for, a huge apocalypse. And we found out after all this transpired at Waco that before we even went on the initial raid, that he had taken his mighty men, 6 or 8 guys that were his, bodyguard or Praetorian guard that surrounded him. And they practiced going out, loading in cars in front of the compound with all their rifles, and they were going to go to Waco and slaughter everyone at the McDonald's. That was before we even went on the raid. So he was reaching for disaster. When I talked to him on the phone, he would say, Jim, I'm 33 and I'm a carpenter. He wouldn't say he was Jesus, but he would say things like this. So it's a much different event. So to call that in on a rancher who's obstructing the court order in Nevada, it's not the same thing. Only in the minds of radical extremists who want the confrontation.
In terms of that you called that seminal event, that meeting that happened in Colorado, am I right when I hear you saying that was essentially after Ruby Ridge? It was sort of, they used that as a galvanizing event to try to bring together disparate strands of the right?
Yes, it was a very, very important event because for all the years leading up to that, we would bust these conspiracies that were hatched really in the back rooms. I mean, we would have an informant in the Klan when they would plot a bombing, they, it'd be 6 or 7 Klansmen, maybe some Nazis in there. They would plot a bombing, and we would have someone in there wired. We would bust it up. The sedition trial in the late 80s was to try to take out the leadership of all these groups, the Klan, the Order. They killed the Jewish talk show host Alan Berg in Denver with a machine gun. And ATF and the FBI were always trying to knock those organizations down. So the Estes Park meeting was their change. And Louis Beam, the Klan leader, tried to push this leaderless resistance. In other words, operate in small cells by yourself or just you and one other. And in fact, that's what Terry Nichols and McVeigh did at Oklahoma City. Yeah. They operated as two.
Understanding how these different events served both as rallying points and as nodes for new types of organizing on the radical right, I think puts a really fine point on how dangerous it is to celebrate that maybe this is the next thing after Ruby Ridge and after Waco. Maybe this is the next organizing moment. To talk about it in those terms just strikes me as incredibly dangerous. Jim Kavanaugh, retired special agent in charge with the ATF, thank you for helping us understand this. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. All right, we'll be right back.